Grumpy Pants by Claire Messer. Penguin was in a bad mood, a very bad mood. He didn't know why and he didn't care. He stomped his feet all the way home. He pulled off his grumpy coat and kicked off his grumpy boots, but he was still grumpy. He tried to shake it off, but he was still grumpy. So he pulled off one grumpy sock and then the other, but he was still grumpy. So he took off his grumpy overalls. Nope, still grumpy. Finally, he took off his grumpy underpants. I'm still grumpy, you know. Then Penguin took a deep breath and he counted. 1, 2, 3, splash. The water was nice and cold. Penguin played with his duck. He hid under the water and made himself a bubble beard. Little by little, he was starting to feel much better. It was time to get out of the tub. He put on his favorite pajamas and he had a steaming cup of hot chocolate. He read his favorite book and he found his favorite teddy and climbed into bed. As Penguin fell asleep, he knew that tomorrow would be a good day because all of the grumpiness had been washed away. What happens when the grumpiness can't be washed away? I mean, it's a cute children's book, and we all understand that we've all had days where we've woken up on the wrong side of the bed. You know, those days where just something feels off and you kind of make your way through and you're not really sure what's wrong or what's not wrong. I mean, but you just make your way through and you just know, well, maybe it's just one of those off days. Wake up the next day and the grumpiness is gone. But we're all living in a season right now where it's so much more than grumpiness, isn't it? Like I think about the last 4 weeks, our social distancing, our social isolation, our quarantine. I mean, words and phrases that, have completely different meaning now than they did 4 or 5 weeks ago. Do you find yourself waking up in the morning? Do you remember that older movie, Groundhog's Day with Bill Murray? You know, every day he wakes up, it's the same day. It just repeats itself. Doesn't that feel like it does now? You wake up every day, and do you find yourself wondering, what day is it? I woke up one Saturday morning, and I started pulling out all of the food, marinating, getting things defrosted, getting ready for Easter Sunday dinner, only to have my wife come downstairs, and Kim looked at me, and he's like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm getting ready for Easter dinner, duh. She goes, Chris, Easter's a week from tomorrow. I was a week completely off. You see, I think if we were just facing grumpiness right now, that would be one thing. But we all know we're navigating something so much different, so much deeper, at moments so much darker. Well, my name is Chris, and it's so good to have all of you with us today. And we're going to be journeying through this series titled Unstitch'd. How to hold things together when we're coming apart. And if you're like me, which I just think we're all at the same place, all of us at some level find ourselves coming unstitched. And so we're just going to face the reality that all of us are living in, this unprecedented season where we find ourselves trying to figure out how do we navigate life now? I mean, life was difficult before, but this last 4 weeks, we're all facing something no one's faced before. So we're going to be following the life and the storyline of a guy named Elijah. Elijah was a prophet of God, which means that he was God's spokesperson. God would tell Elijah what to say and to who to say it to, and Elijah would just go find that person or that group of people and say, hey, God says this. So we're going to follow Elijah's storyline, and we know very little bit about Elijah, but there are some really cool moments along his story that I think are going to be super helpful as we make our way through this series called Unstitch'd. Well, two of the key other kind of characters or people in the storyline for today are one of them is named King Ahab. And King Ahab was a king of God's chosen people, the Israelites. But it's important to remember that God didn't want his people, the Israelites, to have a king. He actually tried to convince them not to have a king. But he finally said, if you want a king, I'm going to give you a king. And just know that kings are going to do what they're going to do. They're going to abuse their power. They're going to position themselves. They're going to manipulate you. I mean, just kings do what kings do. And over the years, kings did exactly what God knew they would do. And King Ahab was an evil king. But we'll get to more of him in a moment. King Ahab was married to Jezebel. And Jezebel and King Ahab had this competition going on to who could be the evilest of the two. I mean, they really were competitive individuals, and you're going to see that play out. First time Elijah has this interaction with King Ahab, he says something so direct to him. But you see, what Elijah knew is exactly what the Bible describes about Ahab. This is what the Bible says about King Ahab, that he, King Ahab, did more to provoke the anger of the Lord, the God of Israel, than any of the other kings of Israel before him. I mean, Elijah understood that King Ahab was a really evil king. And this is why Ahab provoked that level of anger to God. You see, King Ahab led God's people, the Israelites, away from worshiping him, the one true God, Yahweh. And King Ahab led the Israelites to worship the Canaanite gods, Baal and Asherah. Now, Baal, the literal translation of that name is, well, the one who rides the clouds. Another title for Baal was the storm god. The Canaanites would worship Baal to bring rain, to fertilize the land so the land could grow crops. Now, Baal was married to Asherah, and Asherah was the fertility goddess. And together, the ancient Canaanite faith structure, religion, was all focused on Baal and Asherah. And this is important to understand because this is deep-rooted into the culture. That if there's no rain, then there's no grain. If there's no grain, then there's no life. For them, I mean, thousands and thousands of years ago, I mean, rain was everything. I mean, we understand the importance of water now. But for them, I mean, they had to have it rain. And God over and over again to the Israelites said, I will provide, I will provide, I will provide. And the storyline throughout the Bible reflects that God did provide for his people. But now King Ahab had led God's people away from worshiping him and trusting in him to now worshiping these Canaanite gods. And you see, part of the framework around this ancient religion had two powerful driving forces. The first one, the demand for rain, again, that's just life, for food, for water, and the drive for sex. Because what they would do is they would worship Asherah through having sex with the different prostitutes and temple prophetesses. And they thought that they could convince Asherah to have Baal bring the rain. And so these two driving factors, the demand for rain and the drive for sex, were at the foundation of this ancient Canaanite faith. And Ahab had led God's people to worship Baal and Asherah. So Elijah comes to Ahab, and the first recorded conversation we have is Elijah says to Ahab, as surely as the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, the God I serve. Elijah makes it clear, Elijah makes it known that he follows the one true God, Yahweh, that he serves only God. Not all of these other Canaanite gods that Ahab you're serving, you're worshiping, and you're following. No, I follow the one true God. And then Elijah gives Ahab the message from God. He says, there will be no dew or rain during the next few years until I give the word. That famine was going to erupt within the land. Famine. No rain. No crops. How you're going to eat. And for 3 years, they faced famine. 3 years. Now, we've been in quarantine about 4 weeks or so. 4 weeks. And it's been hard. I don't want to minimize what we have faced, but I just want to put this in perspective for a moment. They faced famine for 3 years, over 150 weeks. That was their reality. Over 150 weeks. And then one day, God says, now it's time. Go to Ahab and give him a message. And so Elijah takes off to go find Ahab. And as he was approaching Ahab with a message from God, Ahab sees him coming. And Ahab goes, so is it really you, you troublemaker of Israel? I mean, what a nice, warm, encouraging greeting from the evil king Ahab. And Elijah looks at the king and says, hey, we're going to have an epic competition. An epic competition. And Ahab, this is how it's going to look. You go gather up your 450 prophets of Baal and your 400 prophetesses of Asherah. And it's going to be 850 of your prophets versus the one true God. So he sets up the scenario where they're going to take a bull and put the bull on the altar of wood, and they were going to dance around it, and that they're going to call to their God, Baal and Asherah, to rain down fire from heaven. So all day long, 850 prophets danced around the altar, sang around the altar, screamed around the altar. They cut themselves. I mean, their bodies were just flowing with blood all day long, crying out to their God to rain down fire from heaven, and nothing. Then Elijah steps up. And not only does Elijah step up, he instructs some people to go get 4 jars of water, big jugs of water, to bring them and pour the water over the altar. He digs a trench around it to make sure it captures the water. And then he sends them back, and they do it 3 times. 3 times. Massive jugs of water. The bowl completely covered in water. The wood saturated with water. The trench filled with water. The ground completely covered in water. And then Elijah calls out to the one true God. His God, Yahweh. And fire rains down from heaven and burns everything up. God wins. One God, the true God, versus the 850 prophets of Baal and Asherah. Elijah takes all the prophets and kills them all. If you've never read the story, I would encourage you to read this story. It's a great story. Well, at this moment, Elijah's. He's victorious. God's victorious, but it's Elijah. It's one of those pinnacle moments. Well, Ahab goes back to Jezebel to tell Jezebel everything that had happened. But what had been going on, Jezebel, during this little competition, she had been out killing other prophets of the one true God, because this is what Jezebel did. She wanted to wipe out all the prophets of the one true God. Ahab goes and tells Jezebel, hey, let me tell you the story of what I just witnessed. And Jezebel says, may the God strike me and even kill me if by this time tomorrow I have not killed you just as you killed them, meaning Elijah. She's gunning for Elijah. She's coming after Elijah. She wants to kill Elijah. And how do you think Elijah responds? Remember what he just witnessed. He was afraid. And he fled for his life. Now, was his fear rational? You could easily say yes. He had heard the stories about how evil Jezebel was. He knew that she was out killing prophets just like him. But on the other side, what had Elijah just witnessed? Just witnessed God rain down fire from heaven. He just witnessed God do something unimaginable. But fear is powerful, isn't it? Fear has such a significant impact on you and on me. Well, there's going to be 4 insights that we're going to hold on to from, Elijah's life, especially as he's coming unstitched. And these 4 things that we're going to learn from Elijah's life apply to us to this day. You're going to see them in your life. Maybe all 4, maybe the 2 out of the 4. I don't know how many numbers, but you're to find moments as you look at Elijah's life as he's coming unstitched, and it's going to be like, oh, you're going to say to yourself, yeah, that's happening right now. Well, the first one is what we see him do. He escapes. He runs for his life. And don't we do that when we become unstitched? We escape. Now, we might not run for our lives. There's other ways we all escape. We eat too much. We eat way too late at night. We eat the wrong things late at night. We drink too much. We escape into just scrolling through social media. We escape by binge watching Netflix or Hulu, right? We escape by just focusing all of our energy on our hobby. We escape by sleeping all day long. I mean, there's a whole list of things. How do you escape? You know how you escape. When you feel yourself coming unstitched, what do you do to try to get away from that feeling, from that tension, from that reality? Well, Elijah's running for his life. And he went to Beersheba, a town in Judah, and he left his servant there. And then he went on alone into the wilderness, traveling all day. Now, it's easy to read these words and just quickly make your way through it. Maybe for you, you've read the story before, and you just rush right through that because, right, there's other more exciting parts of Elijah's story. But I think this is significant because this leads to the second thing. Think about what he does, okay? He has a servant with him, a servant. Now, this wasn't a slave. This would have been, think about a close companion, someone that would have followed and walked with Elijah everywhere. You could even call him a best friend. I mean, Elijah and this servant knew each other that well because they went everywhere together. And all of a sudden, as Elijah's escaping, he looks at his servant, his friend, and says, you need to stay. I'm going to go off alone. You see, when we become unstitched, we do what Elijah did. We isolate. We isolate, don't we? And it's one of the most dangerous parts as we're becoming unstitched. You see, God is in relationship with himself. It's a powerful thought. God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. They're in relationship with themselves. And we, you and me, are created in God's image, in God's likeness. We were created for relationship. We were created to be together. And hear me, this isn't about extrovertedness and introvertedness. My wife, Kim, is extrovert. I'm on the introvert side. I'm not talking about that personality types. No. Even if you're an introvert, you're designed for relationship. And we think about what's happening right now in our quarantine, our social distancing, in our social isolation. We're being forced into isolation. We're being forced into it. And that's why we as a church have been doing everything we can throughout the week. I mean, for the last 4 weeks, trying to create intentional connection points for all of us. I mean, nights of worship and Facebook Live and making sure that people are engaging on our online campus in chat, not just to watch, not just to consume, but engage in conversation. It's why we've been creating other spaces for kids and students to interact together. We're doing everything we can to try to help us not isolate because all of us at some level are becoming unstitched. And we want to isolate. And hear this. You can be on social media and feel like you're connecting and still isolating. You can be texting people and still be isolating. The question is, are you really revealing what's going on within you? Are you actually sharing with people the areas in your life that you're coming unstitched? Well, Elijah sends his servant on. He finds a solitary broom tree and he begins to pray. And what do you think? Elijah, a prophet of God, a man of God, a man of great faith. What do you think he prayed for in this moment? He prayed that he might die. He said, I've had enough. I've had enough. Are you there now? Have you just had enough? You find yourself going, really, can I do this another day? Can I face another day? Can I wake up another morning and go, how do I get through this day? Maybe it's loneliness, maybe it's financial pressure, maybe it's job, maybe you just got laid off or you know it's coming your way. Maybe you're just so overwhelmed with fear and anxiety where you're just thinking about what's life going to look like 6 months from now, and you're just consumed there. You're reading the news and every headline just has you filled with fear. Do you find yourself right now just saying, I've had enough? I want you to know, Elijah, a prophet of God, got to that point. And not only did he say, I had enough, he goes, God, take my life, for I'm no better than my ancestors who have already died. It's like, I'm no better. No better. You see, this leads to the third thing that happens when we become unstitched. We escape, we isolate, and we ruminate. Now, this word ruminate is an awesome word. It comes from this Latin word that means to chew over again. Usually the word ruminate gets tied to cattle, because that's what cows do, right? Cows graze on grass, they eat it, they swallow it, they throw it back up in their mouth, they chew it again and swallow it again and repeat. Disgusting, I know. But that's what they do over and over again. They chew, they swallow, they throw it up, they chew it again, they swallow, they throw it up. I mean, that's what ruminating is, chewing over again. But we ruminate mentally, don't we? With our thoughts. That's what Elijah was doing. I'm no better than my ancestors. I'm no better than. God, I gave you my life, and look where I am at now. God, yeah, you rained down fire from heaven, but then Jezebel was coming my way. God, I gave you my life, and now I'm running for my life. God, why, God? Think about when Elijah isolated himself from his servant, his friend. I think, we don't know this from the text, I think that's where the ruminating really kicked in. Because that's what happens. That's why isolating is so dangerous. So dangerous. Because when we isolate, our thoughts run rampant. And guess what we do with our thoughts? We ruminate our thoughts. We regurgitate them. We flip them over and over again. We chew them and throw them back up and chew them and throw them back up, don't we? Our minds. We ruminate. Elijah was at that point. He didn't want to go on. And he laid down and slept under the broom tree. And then watch what God does in his life. As he was sleeping, an angel, God's messenger, God sent someone to help Elijah. And that angel touched him. I mean, isn't there a power of touch? Some of you hate hugs. Some of you love hugs. And most of us are in between. I mean, you know someone who loves hugs. Like you have a name right now. That person, when you see them, you know you're going to get a hug no matter if you want it or not. Like you cannot tell them no. They're just going to hug you. For some of you, you're the hugging type. For some of you, you're like me. I'm never sure. Do I hug? Do I not hug? I'm conflicted when it comes to hugs. But we all know there's something about human touch. It's why we see Jesus over and over again touching people to heal people. There's power in human touch. And God sends this messenger. And I think God said to the messenger, hey, when you get to Elijah, make sure you touch him. Don't stand on a distance. Don't stand up on a big stone. Don't stand, right? Walk up to him and put your hand on him. There's something about human touch. And he told him, get up and eat. And not only did he tell him to get up and eat, watch how God provides for him. He looked around, and Elijah looked around, and there beside his head was some bread baked on hot stones. I mean, can you smell that? And a jar of water. So Elijah ate and drank and lay down again. See, here's what God knows about all of us when we're becoming unstitched. The fourth one, we neglect. There's a whole list of things we start to neglect. Counselors, psychologists will say that whenever you're going through an extremely stressful period of life, one of the most important things that you can do physically that is connected to you mentally is to simply drink water. Water is one of the greatest healing things, especially when you're going through grief, when you're going through loss, when you're going through pain, when you're going through sadness, is to drink water, to keep your body hydrated. That if you care for your physical body, it's going to help your mental side of who you are and your emotions. And God just knew that Elijah was neglecting just some of the basic needs: food, water, and human touch. So Elijah, the angel of the Lord came again and touched Elijah and said, "Get up and eat some more, or the journey ahead will be too much for you." So he got up and ate and drank, and the food gave him enough strength to travel 40 days and 40 nights to Mount Sinai, the mountain of God. Next week, we'll pick up from the story from there. But let me ask you this question. Out of these four, escape, isolate, ruminate, and neglect. If you took a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being you're not dealing with it at all, and 10 being like 100%. Where do you find yourself right now? Where do you find yourself? I want to give you just a few moments. My challenge for you is to write down these 4 words. Maybe take a screenshot of these 4 words. And literally write down, or maybe you're sitting with someone, a friend, a spouse, sitting with your kids, and talk about escape, 1 to 10. Isolate, 1 to 10. Ruminate, neglect, 1 to 10. Just put a number where you find yourself right now in this season of life. Well, I just want you to know that we as a church, we want to help you. In this season that we're facing ourselves right now, when all of us are at some level coming unstitched, and every season after, that we as a church, a gathering of people, we're committed to walking together because God has designed us to do this journey of life together. It's why we've designed what we call the life path, is we want to help people walk along the life path together. Well, one of the resources I just want to point out is you can simply go to tcconline.church/pray. We'll drop that link into the chat as well. And if you just have something that you just need us to pray for, please let us know. And I mean that. We as a team, a staff, we just want to pray over you specifically by name and what you're facing. If you have a real need, put it in that prayer window and just let us know. And we just want to pray for you. And if there's something else specifically we can do with you, for you, to help you, please let us know. Please let us know. Don't isolate. Don't isolate. Well, my wife and I were going through a pretty difficult season of life where we were coming unstitched. And my wife had a really good friend who painted this for her and gave it to her. She wrote the words to a worship song called Oceans. And it's a song that we're going to sing in just a few moments. But I wanted to read just a few of these words because I think these words are so fitting to what we're all facing right now. You call me out upon the water, the great unknown, where feet may fail. And I find you in the mystery, in oceans deep. my faith will stand. And I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. For I am yours, and you are
my soul will rest in your embrace, for I am yours, and you are mine. Oh. Your grace abounds in deepest waters. You saw